Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Infinite Danger Room podcast at newsok.com. I'm Matthew Price of the Oklahoman. I'm here with our regular panelists, Anthony Brown, Chris Borthick, Matt Howlett. They're going to talk to you, talk to me, talk to all of us about what they thought about the Doctor Strange movie, which, as we're recording this, was just released in theaters yesterday. Stars Benedict Cumberbatch as the Doctor. Of course, the character was created back in the 60s by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. So he has a pretty good lineage as far as comic book characters go. Those are the same people who created The Amazing Spider-Man. So what we're going to talk about, for the most part, is what we thought of the film. We might talk a little bit about comic book origins and that sort of thing as well. But the latest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Anthony, why don't we start with you? What do you think? Doctor Strange, you've been ready to say stuff for a while here. What do you think of the film? How does it fit in? What are your pros and cons? That sort of thing.
I thought the film was good. I don't know that it made me care for the character anymore. Doctor Strange wasn't really one of my favorite characters going in, and I don't think that it did anything to make me care for him anymore. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a good movie. I liked how at the end of the movie with the Eye of Agamotto that they tied it into the Infinity Stones, and so there was a point earlier this week or in the last couple of weeks where we found out Doctor Strange was going to be in the Avengers Infinity movies, and so now we see that that's where they're going to weave him in. Maybe it's just a cameo appearance, maybe he becomes an Avenger or joins the fight against Thanos for the Infinity Stones, but at least now we know how he kind of works his way into the larger Avengers universe.
I guess we should say we probably will hit some spoilers on this, so if you haven't watched the film yet, watch the film, and then we will have our discussion of it. So, Chris, why don't you give us your take?
Well, I really liked the movie overall. I think I'm like Anthony, though. I mean, I like Doctor Strange, but he's always been, in the comics at least, a hard character for me to read, because it depends largely on who's writing him as to whether the story kind of captures his essence. Now, I really thought the film did a great job of that, and now, probably unlike Anthony, I would like to see the next movie and see what's happening, and, I feel like I'm more interested in where they're going to go with the character, because this is also the opportunity to dive in fresh to him, as opposed to all the backstory that's with the original character. I think they did a really good job of capturing what the origins of the character are. I also appreciated the very large PSA for don't text and drive, so I thought that was well done. But overall, it's really good, and the tie-in to the larger Marvel universe with, of course, the end scenes too was awesome. So,
Matt Howlett.
I liked it, but it's not my favorite Marvel movie. And I know a lot of people are saying some people have said it's the best Marvel movie. It's like a Iron Man #1 reboot, so to speak, but with Doctor Strange as the now headlining character for the new Marvel universe. I would say for Marvel, this is their Suicide Squad. A little messy. The plots jumped around, and the characters' intentions didn't always make sense. However, Benedict Cumberbatch's acting as Doctor Strange is excellent. The few scenes we do have Rachel McAdams in it are great. I think Mads Mikkelsen is a phenomenal actor, and I'll watch anything he's in. Just last thing I've seen with him was Hannibal, so I'm already sold on him being this psychopathic sorcerer killer person, because that's how I've always seen him in movies and on James Bond as well. But some of the things I had problems with were how quickly Strange was able to master the mystic arts. It seemed like in one scene he's barely able to create a portal with his sling, and then towards the end he's doing it as if he's been doing it his whole life. Fight scenes where he's fighting the minions of, and I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but Caecilius. He's struggling to keep up with them, and towards the end of the movie, he's taking on Dormammu as if he is the Sorcerer Supreme. So maybe that's just showing that Stephen Strange is just excellent in everything he does, and it doesn't take him a long time to master anything. But for me, it went a little too far. Like I feel like we should have seen a little more trial and error up to that point. Which is going to bring another point is I think that an origin for Doctor Strange wasn't necessary for this movie. Think like Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. They told the entire origin in the opening credits. I feel like we could have just had a Doctor Strange movie where he's already been through all the training, is a Sorcerer Supreme, and can start telling a story there versus the whole lead up and us trying to believe that a arrogant doctor can have a twist of fate and become a world-class sorcerer, or universal sorcerer, I guess how you want to look at it. That just means that Doctor Strange 2 will probably be a much better movie for me. But that was my take.
Okay. Let's see. As far as my overall take, Doctor Strange has been a guy I'm kind of hit or miss on, but I like the early Lee Ditko stuff. And I haven't read all the rest of it, but I've read it here and there. And I thought this did a good job of giving you that Lee Ditko feel. It had more humor than I thought it was going to have. The villains were a little mishy-mashy for me, but they are in a lot of these things. Like, you want evil because evil, that sort of thing. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time throughout for a character that, like I said, I don't know that I was necessarily sold on just because it's Doctor Strange. I definitely want to see this. But with the film they had, I had a good time. I thought they did a good job with it. I was going to address a couple of Matt's points, at least my perception of them. Number one, I think at the end, if you watch, we're not really sure how long he fights Dormammu. It could be 10 years. He goes in, and when he comes back, his hair is a whole lot grayer at the temples than when he walked in there. And I think part of that might be so that when they start the next movie, he can already be pretty much proficient. Like, he could have spent 10 years saying, Dormammu, I'm here to parlay, and just trying different spells, learning different things as he's fighting him. Because that could be a very extended amount of time that he was doing that battle. I mean, they showed a few, but there's really no telling because time was a loop. And, I mean, my read of it, just because they showed his hair being, it got slightly grayer throughout the film, but then it's quite a bit more like the comic gray at the very end, that maybe he spent, 10 years in there doing that. Now, as far as him picking up stuff pretty quickly, yeah, they do kind of make him kind of an autodidact and, has automatic recall and all this different stuff. Which may be a little bit to believe, but I think, they had to get him there somewhere. And I think saying, well, okay, I have automatic recall, and that's how I got my PhD and my MD at the same time. Okay, if you can do that, maybe you can learn all the books in Wong's library as well. But for the most part, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. I didn't have too much of a problem with it being an origin, and here's why. With the Hulk, he's been in 10 different cartoons. There's a very, well-known series with Lou Ferrigno. There had just been an origin movie, 5 years before that. So I think if you were going to do the origin of the Hulk again, it would have felt like, well, how many times have I seen this? Kind of like, I think, what they would feel like with Spider-Man right now. We've just had 2 origins in the last 10 years. With Doctor Strange, I think probably 90% of the people going to see this movie aren't really going to know who it is. I mean, for us, we're probably like, well, I've read those origin stories. They've been around for a long time. But I think probably for 90% of the people who go to see a Doctor Strange movie, they're going to know Marvel, something to do with magic. Maybe the most, I mean, that's probably what they're going to go in knowing. So I think giving the origin for your more casual fans, it's pretty much, I think they're pretty much expecting an origin story when they don't know who the character is. At least that's my feeling as to why they felt like they had to do an origin. Because I think that Marvel is kind of, they've obviously said, look, with Spider-Man, we don't feel like we need to. But with Doctor Strange, maybe they feel like, okay, we need to tell you who this character is because you, the average moviegoer, probably aren't that familiar with his backstory.
Well, again, this is the stranger walking up on the street, right? Like, there's a reason why at every Target, Walmart, every place you go, you see the Captain America shield everywhere, and a million people can tell you who Captain America is or who Spider-Man is. But if I were to put a picture of Doctor Strange on my shirt or just his logo and walk around, only the people on this podcast or, the people that listen to this podcast would be like, oh, that's a sweet Doctor Strange shirt, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to do the origins for those people because they're pandering to the have-nots than to the haves because,
Well, we're already going to go see it.
Exactly. Well, my plan wasn't to go see this, but then we talked about it and we're doing it for the podcast, so I'm doing it for the people. So, and for a date night for my wife. So
There you go.
we went.
But in general, probably
Right.
people who have read Doctor Strange comics,
Exactly.
they're already going to figure.
Exactly. So my only experiences from a comic book standpoint with Doctor Strange or from the Spider-Man cartoons where he made random appearances, Avengers books and other things where he showed up for a couple of issues, but I had never read a Doctor Strange solo comic book because he's just never been a character that appealed to me. And even when they announced, that they were doing a Doctor Strange movie, my immediate reaction was, well, that's what I'm going to skip. So I do think that they did a good job. I feel like they could pull some people in. Walking out of the movie theater into the car, there were plenty of little kids that were trying to mimic his hand motions and things like that. So I feel like they they did what they wanted to do, and Marvel has done some magical things with their movie franchise. I do hate that they changed the intro to the movie to be a Marvel Studio intro as opposed to the comic book one, because I always liked the nuggets or whatever they call those things, Easter eggs, that you would see while they were flipping the comic book together to say Marvel. But again, Marvel's new direction as a company is everything revolves around these movie franchises. So, and the comic books mean less and less.
I kind of understand. I thought the same thing. I thought, man, I like the comic book flip, but then I was also thinking, well, at this point, they've established so much mythology in their own universe that they don't necessarily have to say, this is from this mythology that you don't know about from the comics. They can say, this is from the mythology, especially for somebody like Doctor Strange. This is connected to Iron Man and Thor and all these other people who you have seen their movies.
So can we jump down a rabbit hole really quick?
Sure, you might as well.
I have my own to go down.
So if that's the case, right, then leave the comics alone, right? Bring the Fantastic Four back to prominence. Bring the X-Men back to prominence because they paid the freight for so long. And I know I've said this on previous podcasts of ours.
The Anthony Brown drinking game.
But, leave the comics alone then. And, if the movies are now at the point where you don't need the comic books for the intro and the movie franchises can stand alone, then, hey, give me back my Fantastic Four comic book, and I'm doing my best to get this a G-rated podcast.
I understand where you're coming from as a guy who loves the FF and the X-Men.
Right.
And you kind of see all these other characters that you don't really care that much about get this kind of love and attention. You're probably like, man, Fantastic Four, come on, that made Marvel Comics, and you can't make a movie with this kind of love and care for Fantastic Four, but you can for Doctor Strange, who is probably a B-list guy.
And before there was an Avengers movie, right? There was a Fantastic Four cartoon with Herbie the Robot. So before you saw Ant-Man on your television, in any sort of prominent way, Marvel had greenlit a TV show or a cartoon series with Herbie the Robot. And I love Herbie the Robot. I have a Herbie the Robot t-shirt. But that tells you everything that you need to know about the Avengers franchise up until, they took
More
over.
recent time, sure.
Yeah.
Is your rabbit hole related to this one, or is it completely side note? I'll add this in, and maybe it'll transition what you're saying. Maybe it's not. I don't know if you saw the interview with Chris Claremont when somebody asked him, why are the X-Men not as prominent? And he said, I think it's really because of the movies.
Yes.
The different studio controls them, so if they're going to throw their weight behind something, they throw their weight behind things that they control the rights to. Anyway, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to mention the reason why I think the crawl at the very beginning was different. Was, Doctor Strange, I believe, is the first Marvel movie that is now under Disney, where Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, is now in control of it, rather than Ike Perlmutter, who was the CEO of Marvel. Even though Marvel's owned by Disney, Marvel still operates as its own company. They can share ideas and they can work together, but Doctor Strange was the first movie to break away from Marvel and is actually officially under Disney control. And I'm wondering if maybe that's their way of saying that this is separate from Marvel Comics versus every movie before. I wish I had some news articles that would link to this, but forgive me, guys. The name of the producer of all the Marvel movies, who kind of is the showrunner, so to speak, of the Marvel.
Feige.
Yeah. This movie was the first movie where he was able to operate where he reports to Bob Iger rather than Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that was the first change, was let's make Marvel Studios.
Let's reflect the success we've had in films.
Yeah.
Which is a tremendous amount of success. I don't want to downplay the fact that
Right.
they've had a tremendous amount, almost unprecedented amount of success as far as like, we release something and it's gold. I mean, almost no one has done this the way that they have.
Maybe
So if they
James
want to
Bond,
celebrate that, even James Bond, I think, had fits and starts and years off.
I mean, what Marvel Movie Studios has done is basically the equivalent of what happened to Apple with the iPod, right? Like that, Apple had always had good stock, but when the iPod came out, it catapulted that company, and now look at how dominant Apple is. Like everyone has some sort of iDevice of some sort, or is interactive with some sort of iDevice at some point in their life because of what that's done. And so the Marvel movie franchise has widened the birth of comic books everywhere, and it's now a main part of everyone's
yeah.
life.
And they didn't just launch it. Like, there's been Batman franchises, there's been Superman franchises, but they managed to make their brand Marvel not only a franchise, but also a franchise that you're not like, well, we'll see one of these every 3 years, but like, I'm willing to see 2 or 3 of these a year, and they haven't missed yet. I mean, that's pretty unprecedented branding. I can't think of a time in motion pictures where somebody's not based on a star, and not really, based on, just based on the fact that they're all this interconnected universe, people are showing up.
I mean, these movies are making people's careers, right? Like Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, like that brought him back from
It definitely made the comeback. I mean, he was working his way back, but that skyrocketed the comeback for sure.
Exactly. I mean, Chris Hemsworth. I mean, look at what that's done for him. I mean, just on and on and on and on. And I mean, not that Benedict Cumberbatch couldn't stand on his own before, but like,
if he had #1 movie, you'll help
right?
him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this moves you to a different plateau. It moves you to a better tax bracket. All of that stuff that comes along with it because of the power and gravitas of what Marvel's created.
Maybe bring it back to Doctor Strange. Just a
Sure,
little bit.
sure, absolutely.
Because there were some things I still want to talk about.
Absolutely,
we
yeah.
went
Let's.
down rabbit
We
hole
did
and,
a little bit of the larger Marvel Studios. So let's talk about
well,
Doctor Strange
Well, to interrupt
specific.
you, since we're going to go back to Doctor
All right,
Strange, because I was
fair
waiting for. Well, I wanted to address a couple of things you said about your criticisms of the movie. One of the things that you may have missed, or maybe about, you say, oh, well, suddenly he's more powerful. When a lot of traditions, when they talk about mysticism all throughout the world, one of the biggest issues for anybody is to get past yourself, which was a big theme for him in the first part of this movie. Was it's all about me, it's all about healing myself, being me again, me, and the very end, spoiler, when the Ancient One's dying, what is it that she says to him? It's not about you. And at that point, he suddenly becomes much more, because he realizes that it's not about him. And so, to me, that was a huge moment in the movie where they kind of did justice to a lot of belief systems out there, which was pretty cool. Also, I really think that Doctor Strange is unique in that, yes, the photographic memory thing was kind of a hedge of, oh, you can now remember everything. Wouldn't that be awesome? But I also think it's pretty cool if you think about it, too, for kids watching the movie, because what is it that Doctor Strange did? He learned stuff and became much better. So
He studied.
He studied. He read books. He didn't, he
Wasn't bit by a spider.
And he's still an awesome character, and he still saves the world. So I don't know. I think he's a twist on the Marvel character we're used to seeing in the movies, but I don't think that he's necessarily a bad twist.
positive things about the movie from my perspective. Cinematography, special effects, best Marvel movie so far in that regard. The scene where they're in, I guess, New York City, and the buildings are just like turning and crumbling into each other, but they're like that's just mind melting for me. I know they've already done that in Inception and maybe a little bit, even in Ant-Man where they're traveling through portals. I mean, we kind of saw that at the end of Ant-Man, and I almost want to see if they'll make a nod to the microverse. In Doctor Strange, or maybe Doctor Strange runs into Ant-Man and tries to explain to him like what he just encountered there really was another dimension, and maybe that might be how they bring the Wasp back. Seems like Doctor Strange would have a somewhat of an ability to help with that.
Yeah.
Especially since we saw a spoiler after credit scene,
Mid credit.
Thor and Doctor Strange agreed to help Thor in his journey to find Odin. I wonder if we're going to see Doctor Strange in Thor.
In the Thor movie? I kind of thought maybe we would based on that.
Yeah.
I mean, so Thor, Strange, and Hulk, we're getting kind of close to a Defenders.
Pretty close to some
right?
Defenders, yeah.
I'm just hoping that Marvel and Fox can figure their thing out and get some Fantastic Four back into the mix. My suggestion, if Marvel and Fox are listening, is to give Fox the rights to Gwenpool. Because everyone loves Gwenpool right now, and they could put Gwenpool in the new Deadpool movie and trade. I don't want the Fantastic Four. Just give us Silver Surfer.
Just want
Just
Silver
Silver-
Surfer. Well,
Silver
what are you
Surfer.
going to trade for Anthony? Anthony wants Fantastic Four.
Well, Anthony's gonna have to make his own deal. Just one character for another character, and they can share the rights, but we need Silver Surfer and Galactus, I guess, if they want to throw them into.
Yeah, since we're talking all this company across stuff, maybe, depending on how the Spider-Man movie goes, that may yield bigger partnerships, with, well, maybe we'll let Fantastic Four come back into the fold.
Well,
now.
sure. I mean,
So-
Sony's making some of the money on that. If Sony
Yeah.
makes tons of money on that, Fox
And-
might be like, huh.
Maybe we just...
Maybe there's a way to... Obviously, the X-Men movies, as currently configured, they're going to have to start probably thinking about recasting or doing some different things. You can't really use... I mean, Wolverine has said he's pretty much retiring.
Yep.
I think Professor X, you've got two, but one of them is pretty much retiring. So it may be the time is coming for them to enter some negotiations. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, other points about Doctor Strange. We've covered a good portion of stuff, but I'll just go around and get last thoughts. We'll start with Anthony.
One of my favorite parts in the movie was when he first got to the secret base or city or whatever where they were training, and he gets handed the sheet of paper, and he's like, "Oh, what is this? Is this my mantra or whatever? Excuse me for not knowing that." And he's like, "No, this is the Wi-Fi password. We don't live like savages." So I thought Baron Mordo was very strong. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the future. But he was a strong actor, and he's a strong actor in everything that he does.
Oh yeah.
And I thought it was great casting for him. I think that he will be a great rival like he has been to Doctor Strange in the past. And I look forward to checking out, what direction he goes. Maybe he pops up in the Thor movie. Maybe, he becomes one of Thanos' minions because he was involved, on the fringes, depending on how deep you got into the Infinity Gauntlet story. So if you want to try to rope all this stuff in together and basically throw a lasso around it and pull a lot of these guys together, I think that might be possible. Also, this movie makes me more interested in what they're going to do with Captain Marvel with Carol Danvers. Mm-hmm. Because, again, this is one of those she's one of those people that when you said, hey, you're getting your own movie, I was just kind of like, really? So I want to see what direction they go with her and how she kind of weaves her way into all of this. Is she going to be an earthbound hero that becomes a part of the Avengers, or is she going to be the intergalactic hero where you can introduce the Shi'ar Empire or the Kree and some of those others, because they've gone the earthbound way. With Guardians of the Galaxy, they opened up space a little bit, but Carol Danvers herself has a bigger connection and a more storied history with the greater Marvel universe and the galactic universe side of Marvel. And so with Doctor Strange, they did the mystical stuff. So I'm trying to see, or this is making me wonder, just how wide of a net they're going to cast about their history as far as their various comic landscapes.
All right, good point, Chris.
Well, I second the. I'm really looking forward to the broader Marvel universe now, especially with that end scene with Thor. Makes me wonder also if they're going to do some mystical stuff in Black Panther and kind of kind of bring that in, and having Doctor Strange around to maybe make these little cameos, because he's known for popping up in the comics anyway, all over the place randomly. So I think that's a great thing. I was going to say my favorite. I was worried about it when the scene started with Dormammu, because of the CGI aspect. I kind of was worried we were about to get Galactus from the original Fantastic Four series. Well, it's just like, oh no. And then it turned out really well, and he was just like he was in the comics. So I really enjoyed that scene. And I also enjoyed the mini tie-in with Rhodey at the very first of the movie, where he's on the phone and he's like, "I've got this vet. It's got his back broken."
Oh, yeah, I didn't catch that.
He was like, "No," and I was like, "Jerk! He didn't help Rhodey." But I thought it was. Cool.
I did not catch that.
Yeah.
Good Easter egg, Matt.
Oh wow, I'm still realizing that I missed it. And I have to see it again, which is fine.
I mean, I was actually, when they were saying that stuff, I didn't think Rhodey, but I did think, are any of these characters that we should know? But I didn't connect it. So,
I wanted to mention the movie had a lot of humor in it that I was surprised. Maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, because I knew behind the scenes that Dan Harmon, the creator of Rick and Morty, was hired on to throw some jokes into the script, make it a little funnier. There's like the Wi-Fi password joke was great. When Strange first meets Wong and he says, "Your name's just Wong," like Adele. I thought that was great. There's also another one name that he mentions him as, which I don't want to spoil that joke. The setup for that joke's great, but there's just a lot of humor in it that I think does remind a lot of people of the early Iron Man movies with Robert Downey Jr.'s quips that he would throw out.
Well, don't forget the cloak, which I forgot to mention.
The cloak,
I want one of those. The cloak has never done that in the comics that I know of, but it's so much fun.
But I bet my daughter would have no interest in this movie until that scene came up, and would all of a sudden want me to go buy her a cloak or a cape so she could pretend that was her. So the physical comedy aspect of the cloak was very funny, and I'd like to see more of that too.
Cool. My quick thoughts are just, I feel like it captured what has worked about the early comics that I've read, but made it modern and made it fun for people. So, I mean, good on you for taking a character that people didn't really know, and I think they're going to have a lot of success with it. So, where does this fall? This is probably the last question. Where does this fall among the Marvel movies for you? Middle, top, bottom? What do you think?
As good as Ant-Man.
Yeah.
So if you liked Ant-Man,
is that high middle for you? Middle of the road? Top 3, top 5?
If you want me to rank all the Marvel movies real quick, I can. But I would say like Captain America's Civil War is the best Marvel. Not Civil War. Winter Soldier and then Civil War are like the top 2 best Marvel movies. Yeah. And then like I would say Ant-Man, Doctor Strange are kind of in the middle with maybe one of the Thor movies kind of towards the bottom. Okay. So that's where I rank them.
Okay. Anthony, what do you think?
For me, I guess if we're breaking these out into 3 tiers, this is going to fall in the bottom tier. It was still a good movie because Marvel hasn't made any bad movies. But for me, there was no nostalgia for me because I didn't care about the character coming in. So it's just like, okay, they did a good Doctor Strange movie. I can see how people can get on board with the character. But after the movie, the wife and I were rolling around Target and saw the new Marvel Legends figure, and it was just like, yeah, he's there, but I still don't care. You know, so
it doesn't necessarily connect with you on a personal level.
Yeah, so I mean, I just go back to the X-Men origin movie, the first one. You know, when I first saw all of those characters, and again, I'm an X-Men guy. Like the nostalgia, like it rose out of me, like, and I was like, I mean, I was a little kid again, discovering these characters for the first time.
Right.
And even with some of the other Marvel movies, like the first time Falcon shows up in his wings in Captain America Civil War, like it does something. This did move the meter for me.
Gotcha.
Not to say it was a bad movie, but it was still, I mean, again, they aren't making bad product, but for me, I mean, it's in that third tier. Personally.
Okay. Chris, what do you think?
I would probably put it in the second tier for me. High second tier. Because if I pick a bottom rung, I'm going to say Iron Man 3. Right. To me, that was like the worst of all of them, and it's still good, but it's not as good as anything else that's come out. So I would put it in the upper second tier because I mean the Cap movies are still to me tops with, and especially after Civil War. So I don't know, but he has such potential to move around and be cool, be that cool character that kind of comes in and advises people. I'm looking forward to how they tie him into everything.
Yeah, I guess without listing them all out, I would say probably I feel like it's in the middle as well. I don't think it's better than the Caps or the first Avengers movie or the first Iron Man movie, but it's very solid, and I think it's very strategically important if you're going to say, can we do a more mystical superhero movie? I think they've opened that door and said, yes, we can open that door, and that opens it to some other characters as well, which they're also doing kind of with Ghost Rider on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now.
And Iron Fist.
Yeah, and Iron Fist. They're kind of moving into that category a little more. So
yeah, and actually there was, if you're not watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was a big mystical event that occurred, of course, as the cliffhanger for last week's episode. So I'm sure it's going to tie into all this Doctor Strange stuff because that's what
they tend
generally
to do.
do.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so they're going for mystical this year.
Okay, well, hey, thanks for listening, you guys. Be sure to leave us some feedback if you have the chance. If you'd like to, you can find us Infinite Danger Room on Facebook. We are at Danger Infinite on Twitter, and you can email us at infinitedangerroom@gmail.com. Our episodes are released on iTunes and on SoundCloud via News OK. So thanks a lot for listening, and we will catch you next time.